Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. On November 29th, 2021, the Council approved a list of capital project priorities to share with the Montgomery County delegation as a supplement to the previously approved 2022 state priorities that we presented to the delegation on November 15th. The Council also approved the substance of a letter to Governor Hogan to advocate for enhanced funding for the Office of Immigration Affairs. So today, the Council will determine whether to add $865,000 for the Noyes Library for Young Children Rehabilitation and Renovation Project to the approved list of capital project priorities. And we'll also confirm the approval of a letter to Governor Hogan regarding the Office of Immigration Affairs, and we'll continue our review of local and by-county bills. So I will now recognize Council staff, Ms. Wellens and Ms. McCartney-Green.
Thank you, Council President, and a good afternoon to Council members, Melanie, and OIR staff. As you noted, there are two agenda items that we want to discuss first before getting to our local and by-county bills. Council member Friedson made a request or proposal for consideration of the Noyes Library Rehabilitation Young Children Rehabilitation and Renovation Project, for that to be considered as a part of a capital project priority. Before I go into further discussion, Council President, want to ask if Council Friedman wants to speak a little bit more on that and to get further discussion to see if the committee or the Council would agree to approve this capital project.
Well, thank you, Mr. McCartney-Green. Thank you, Council President. Sent a memo to colleagues. It's not a new issue. It's not something only I have been working on, just to be clear. Councilmember Jawando and I have spoken as lead for libraries. He's been intimately involved in this. I know several council members have been involved. I know Noyes really well. It's a unique institution as being a freestanding children's library. It also is a core part of our early learning efforts. And so as a key priority, since Council President Navarro in the first year of this term has really sets the stage for, and as part of this effort, the council and the county had suggested to the foundation that as the cost escalations have gone up, as their requirements to raise half of it have gone up, that we would help to find alternative funding sources beyond the county. And since this is an opportunity for an alternative funding source from the state, we're in a unique position to request it, given that it is so closely aligned with so much of our efforts in supporting early learning. And this is a unique institution that not only serves the entire county, but with everything that's happening with the ECE coordinating entity and all the other efforts that we're undertaking, it seems to be a good moment to request this. And so I hope that we can add this to the list and would have the support of the full body.
Questions? Council Vice President.
Not a question, just a thanks. It's not a new issue, but this community has continued to steadfastly raise resources, raise awareness, and this is a treasure, as we've all noted for many years now in our community. This tiny little library is like an oasis. It's like literally right out of a children's book, and my kids have enjoyed it, and so have so many other residents across the county, and so it makes all the sense in the world for us to be able to identify an alternative funding source to be able to keep the momentum and get this renovation done, which is desperately needed and will benefit so many more kids for future generations. So thank you, Councilmember Friedson, for your leadership on this bill, and thank you, Councilmember Jawando, as lead for libraries, who's also been very supportive as well as all of my colleagues, and Councilmember Navarro for her leadership in getting this started many years ago. So this one's great. It's an easy one.
Okay.
Council President.
Yep.
Could I just chime in briefly?
Lead for libraries. Yes, please.
Thank you, Thad. I just want to double the thanks and appreciate Councilman Friedson as the district councilman bringing it up, and Councilmember Albornoz as one of the close residents, and also a lot of young kids like myself. But I think this is a big good opportunity to highlight. We've done significant parts on the county. the community has raised, and I think putting it on the list and for potential state resources makes sense. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Terrific.
Mr. President.
Councilmember Lovato.
Yeah, this to me is an example of how sometimes things don't necessarily happen overnight, but it's so important to set the conditions forward. And it is, I think, a prime example as well of how there can be this very strong collaboration with the community, and we can play a significant role in making things like this a reality. So I just want to applaud the community because they have been, so committed from the very beginning and such extraordinary advocates. And this, I think, will go a long way to get this done once and for all. Councilmember Friedson, glad that, this continues. And I think it's also an example of how it doesn't matter, whether there are elections, things continue to be worked on. And, we understand what the priorities are regardless of, elections and that people change and things like that. There are important projects that do need that continuity. And this is, I think, a clear example of this. So thank you for bringing it up. And of course, I'm going to be very thrilled to support this, given that this was a real priority for me years ago as well. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah, Councilmember Friedson, thank you for bringing it up. Years ago, I joined with the D18 delegation to co-sponsor a bond bill in the state for this, and the facility is really a gem, and I'm glad you brought this to our attention. So is there a motion?
I'd like to move for this to be added to the list, please.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Friedson moves, Councilmember Chawanda seconds. All those in favor of adding the Noyes Children's Library to the list, please raise your hand.
Aye.
That is unanimous among those present. Okay. Next is we need a motion to approve the letter to Governor Hogan regarding the Office of Immigration Affairs.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Novato seconds. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Great. That is unanimous among all those present. So now we can move on to the review of our local and bi-county bills. Ms. McCartney Green, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. I'm going to turn the council to page 15 in our packet for today, which is a comprehensive chart of the bills that we'll take a look at today. Last week, we begun a discussion with half of the bills, and so today will be the remaining of those. Before we start, just a couple of things to note. The bills are not in numerical order, but rather in subject matter order. And so we thought that was best to organize time and thoughts and conversations. So please note that. And so I'll just briefly just describe the bill and then just ask OIR to jump in. I know some of the bills do have some legislative history, which I know is important for further discussion. If no questions, I'll start with MC 2322, alcoholic beverage, Class B, beer, wine, and liquor, license, manufacturer's license. Essentially, what this bill would do is authorize the holder of a Class B license who has a beer, wine, and liquor license to be issued a Class 4 limited winery license and a Class 7 microbrewery license to manufacture, sell, and serve certain products within an annual license fee of $1,000, which would take effect next July 2022. Council staff recommends supporting the bill. Essentially, the license would authorize to sell beer and wine for off-premises consumption, for on-premises consumption, and to offer samples of alcoholic beverages at no charge for a fee. There were no objections to this bill, and recommend is to support. Mel, did you have any comments?
We could shorten this. We can move approval. This is for the Revenue Authority's crushing facility, and it's a great program we've all been enthusiastically supporting for some time. So move approval. Support.
Second?
Second.
Councilmember Katz, seconds. Great. Any discussion? Mel, were you trying to get in?
Well, I was just going to note that Amy's also on the line
Hi,
here.
Amy.
If there's anything now that she's with ABS, Alcoholic Beverages Service, but she's going to continue, fortunately for us, to do the ABS package. So any additional information that you might need, she's available to answer some things.
Yes, congratulations. We're glad you're here. So this one's been moved and seconded. Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous among those present. Great.
MC 2122, alcoholic beverage class D beer and wine license, farm breweries and limited wineries. So this bill would authorize the Board of License Commissioner for the county to issue a certain number of class D beer and wine licenses to a holder of a class 8 farm brewery license and a holder of a class 4 limited winery license to sell certain products with the annual license fee of $400. And this would take effect next year, July 2022. Council staff recommends supporting the bill.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved, seconded by Councilmember Friedson. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Great, that is unanimous among those present.
Okay. MC 1222, Damascus alcoholic beverage class B beer, wine, and liquor license. This is a referendum. So really the bill is authorize the Board of License Commissioner for Montgomery County to issue a class B license for Damascus, the 12th election district, subject to a referendum that would be voted on in the election year, November 2022. And what this would do would a few things. One, provide a 7-day class C license to the volunteer fire department. And actually, I may be reading that. I want to make sure I'm reading that correctly.
That's current. They currently are allowed to do that.
Yeah, there you go, Amy. Thank you. Right. So currently what's happening is that Damascus does have a 7-day class C beer, wine, and liquor license to a volunteer fire department for on-premise consumption, and a class H beer and wine license that allows the holder to sell at a restaurant or hotel for on-premises consumption. And so because of the limited restrictions that they have there, this referendum by a majority of voters, if enacted, would issue a license to that 12 election district. And Amy, feel to expound on that, but council staff does recommend support.
Yeah, so I'll just briefly say, as most of you know, Damascus has some restrictions. It doesn't necessarily follow the rest of the county in terms of its alcohol licensing. This is typically how they've done this before. In 2012, they did this for the Class H beer wine license. So this is just the normal processes that they do in order to expand licensing. They take it to referendum. Thank you.
Councilmember Katz.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded by Councilmember Reamer. All those in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous among those present.
Thank you. So MC 822, Economic Development Business Improvement Districts, which we refer to as BIDs. And so current law related to BIDs, this would amend current law related to BIDs to include commercial tenants as a new class of member on the board of directors for any BID, and increase the threshold for interest in forming a BID to 65%, which was previously 50%. There's many discussion that's going on with council staff and legislative analysts discussing whether this bill will create a retroactive to any bids in the county. And so the issue here is whether or not the most recent Silver Spring legislation that the council enacted, that would cause some uncertainty because that would apply retroactively to that legislation. And so one of the things to consider is, even though this provides more representation with commercial tenants, whether or not that this would be an issue. So council staff is recommending support for clarifying amendments that revert to the time of when it would apply to previous bills.
Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you, Council President. We've received a number of correspondence from stakeholders in other parts of the county as well, in addition to Silver Spring, including Friendship Heights and the Pike District. There's a number of related efforts underway, some of which have been through formal county committees in order to move those efforts forward. There's some significant concerns related to aspects of the bill that may have an impact on the Friendship Heights effort, which is cross-jurisdictional with DC, and also on the Pike District efforts that has been undertaken for about a decade now and is moving forward to its next step. So I would recommend that we hold this and clarify some of those issues and concerns before expressing support. I do think that there's a broad interest to provide more seats on the board, to issue some of the concerns that were raised during the process as we were undertaking this, that were restrictions set in state law, but there is a real concern about impacts that it could have, in trying to address some of the concerns in Silver Spring by creating new issues in other areas where there are either currently efforts underway or could be future efforts, like in other parts of the county where urban districts could be moving in other directions, like in Wheaton and in other areas that have been mentioned previously. So I would move that this be held, that those issues be worked through, and some of those questions be answered, that we work through those with the relevant stakeholders.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Jawanda.
Thank you. This issue is something that we talked about a lot, and we passed a resolution sponsored by Councilmember Glass to say that we wanted to be state law changes to make the bid more inclusive. And I think we passed that unanimously, I believe. And this is the bill that I raised at the time of why we should wait and not pass the Silver Spring bid, because this could happen, where we would get a situation where we're now being told by council staff, well, we should support it, but it might impact retroactively the bill we just passed. So just want to point that irony out. But that being said, my understanding from the sponsors, which is our District 20 delegation, is that this would apply when the bid comes up for its renewal in 3 years. And we should definitely clarify that and make sure everyone's on the same page in that understanding before we take a formal position. So I'm actually okay with holding for now, with the intent to just clarify that point in particular, and anything else council members want clarified. But I do think that's my understanding and reading of it. Now, that being said, I still think we shouldn't form an inequitable bid for 3 years in Silver Spring, while others, whether it be Friendship Heights or Wheaton or any other part of the county, Pike District, that wants to form a bid. And again, we're all for business improvement, and we're for, but we want it to be collaborative. I think this is a good bill that lays out a good process that would be good. Any bid you want to have this kind of collaborative engagement that includes commercial tenants, who are the life's blood of the community there. It includes owners of property, both big and small, and other members, and make sure that everyone has buy-in to the success of it. And so I hope that we will eventually support this as a broad policy, but also in just clarifying that point about as it relates to Silver Spring. So just wanted to make that point. I'm fine holding for now, but I think we should ultimately approve this. Thank you.
Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. First of all, I want to second the motion. I don't think you got a second yet. So,
right.
And so I'll second the motion. My only question is, why the 65% threshold? I mean, what you're doing is creating a higher hurdle in order for the bid to take place.
Whom are you asking that question, Sidney? I can certainly answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whoever came up with the 65% number.
Well, it might be the District 20 delegation that's not here, but yeah, it used to be 80% and there were no bids. So, Councilmember Reamer.
Well, I thought it said that it was down from 50%.
Correct. This raises it to 50. The previous legislation went from 80 to 51, which is how we got to where we are. And this would make it harder. You're exactly correct.
Right.
Ms. Winger wants to get in here, Melanie.
Yeah, I do, because I want to note that earlier on in your packet in the memo that OIR sent over to the council, it provides kind of broader descriptions of some of these bills. And in the case of this bid bill, it goes back even to some of the history of the 2017 state legislation. So there's just a little bit more breadth if you want to thumb back into the packet and read those. So.
And I'll certainly do that. But I do think I agree that we should be holding this, that if that could be another part of the discussion, why wouldn't it be 51%, so that there's a greater possibility these things could occur if a majority of both the property owners and the business owners, the commercial tenants, would be in agreement.
Councilmember Glass.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I appreciate that we're having this conversation, which we agreed to have as part of the resolution I introduced that we all unanimously supported. And the reason I believe we all unanimously supported the resolution when the Silver Spring bid came up was because we recognized that there were some changes, nondescript changes, but changes that we wanted to make and recognized needed to be made, but we couldn't do that in Rockville. Those were changes that could only be made in Annapolis. And so here is legislation that is being made in Annapolis that will allow for some of those changes. And I support changes to the law. I also understand that these might not exactly be the changes that this council agrees to. And so for that reason, I am comfortable at this point in time holding so that conversations can continue. But I'm very wary that a hold becomes a de facto no and a de facto opposition and rejection of any changes. And so for my colleagues who might be uncomfortable with the way this legislation is currently drafted and the percentages of buy-in, I ask that we engage in that conversation with the state 20 delegation and with other stakeholders here in the county so that we can find some middle ground, some compromise, so that we can move forward and finalize the agreement that we made vis-a-vis that resolution to make this underlying law more fair and equitable. So I'll support a hold, but I expect that we'll come back to it in a later date. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilmember Reamer.
Thanks. Yeah, I would really, there's a few points in here that I think we have to be sure to get right. The level of approval is certainly one of them. I think that I'd like to know what bids in general require for the share of property owners or tenants. And typically they're separate. They're very unusual to put them both as approval. It's, typically the entities that have to pay for it that, get the approval because they're the ones paying. But in any event, I'm concerned that 65% could be the end of bids. So I'd like to see some information from the sponsors or supporters of it, demonstrating that 65% is reasonable. Because it would be sad if we saw legislation passed that basically not only ended up, preventing the Silver Spring bid from coming to life, but all bids in the county. And my general sense is 65% is really high. I mean, that's potentially prohibitively high. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McCartney Green, do you know about the 8th Street bid or the Anacostia bid or any of the other ones that we modeled on?
No, but I will ask my colleague Gene Smith just to weigh in here because I know he's had a little bit of background information there.
Hi, Gene.
Hello, excuse me. Good afternoon. I also know that this was a collaborative effort. It also included Mr. Camacho and Mr. Drummer from Central staff. So I do not have those numbers in front of me, but we'll be happy to get back to you since this will be an ongoing conversation and we'll look at those and see My recollections are probably slightly higher than 50%, given the need to meet a threshold greater than just half of the property owners. But I don't want to be quoted beyond that.
Mr. Camacho?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the DC bid legislation right now. So a statement must be signed by the owners who own at least 51% interest in the most recent assessed value of the taxable properties in the geographic area of the proposed bid, and at least 25% in the number of individual taxable properties of record in the bid area as a whole. So that's what the DC bid legislation
That's a
is.
property owner bid. That's got nothing to do with tenants as well. So that's quite different, but that's just DC. There are other jurisdictions as well. So I suggest we just come back to this after I've had a chance to get some more information about those kind of
It'd be
issues.
good to have a chart of some of the other ones from around the country. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you. I'm in agreement. I think we should come back and we want to have this to be reasonable. And I think with Mr. Camacho's, he was saying that tenants are also involved. But to your point, Councilmember, well, that's what he said. I think it was 51% and 25% of commercial tenants. Isn't that what you said?
No, I don't think that's what you said.
No, it's 51% of the assessed value of the taxable properties, and then 25% of the individual properties. So we have assessed value, 51% of the assessed value, 25% of the actual number of properties.
Property
Okay.
owner, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then to your point, Councilmember Reamer, I do believe that, and there again, we're coming back. We're spending a lot of time on something we're coming back to, but I do think that the tenants and the commercial owners should be two different groups with percentages. I mean, to have 60, if you had 100% of the commercial owners, including the tenants, but you could get to 65% with fewer tenants. So I think we have to figure out what we're doing here. Thank you, Mr.
I think we need the bill sponsors, who's not us, to present some research, and some examples so that we can have confidence that this is a good model. So fundamentally, I think that's the inquiry here: is could we please get some supporting documentation so that we can be confident that this will be an enhancement for bids. I do want to say that business owners are a majority of our proposed bid as well. Smaller property owners and smaller businesses, but we don't have to relitigate all that at this time. But so thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're clear. Ms. McCartney Green.
Councilmember Jawando has his hand.
Jawando.
Thank you. Yeah, I think.
Oh, sorry, Councilmember Friedman. Changing screens here. Go ahead.
You can go first. I'll follow you if that's okay.
Just wanted to point out, we had been in touch prior to our vote in council on our bill with the D20 delegation on the development of their bill. They've refined it a bit. There has been research that's gone into it. I agree with we should have them be heard. But I also want to point out that the 80% that was existing down to 51% was kind of just that there wasn't a lot of research presented on that. And I think this would still be a reduction because no bid has been formed other than the legislation we moved forward to try to allow for a Silver Spring bid. And I think so 65% is still much lower than 80. And the point is, while we should still hear from them, the point is that you want input, buy-in from everybody there, particularly in places diverse with the type of commercial tenants and businesses of color that are there. And with, frankly, the harm that's been done, you want to have an inclusive, diverse process. And so we can certainly bring it back, but I just want to make sure that point is clear, that I think there's no evidence to suggest that 65% is a high number or that 51% is we haven't presented any of that.
Councilmember Friedman.
Yeah, I just quickly on the DC piece, I just want to reiterate, it is incredibly important, not just for a regional perspective and understanding what's happening in other jurisdictions, because we don't operate in a vacuum, particularly with the Friendship Heights efforts, not having a bid that is allowed to be similar to what is in DC would prevent those efforts from continuing. And so I just, as council staff is looking at these issues, that is one of the challenges here, is to make sure the current rules allow for us to have a cross-jurisdictional bid according to those who are actually working on this with DC through the efforts that are being undertaken. The bill as is being proposed would prevent that from happening, or at least make it extremely challenging from happening. So that's part of what has to be fleshed out here. And as we talked about this issue previously, I had raised the questions and the concerns to make sure that any state law change that is made, while it's important to address some of the issues that have been raised in Silver Spring, it's critical that it not preempt or make more difficult some of the other efforts that are happening around the county. And so I just hope that that is part of this conversation as well. I have been in touch with Delegate Charcuti, and I have been talking to the District 20 delegation. I think we need to do that in a more formalized way. I know several of us have had individual conversations, but we have to make sure that the state law doesn't mandate things in order to try to resolve issues that could be a challenge. And I'll lastly say, if the state law allows for things, the council could put them in place in certain communities versus others, reflecting the differences in those communities. And so the mandating of certain things versus the allowance of certain things, for instance, like the size of the board, et cetera. Right now we have no flexibility, and we had no flexibility on a lot of these issues when we took this up. The state law could allow for some flexibility, but not necessarily require that, because we could be creating the same issue that we had previously, that we have no flexibility on many key aspects, and that makes it difficult for entities that are significant to the county's economic development and to the key stakeholder efforts that have been undertaken over the last several years. So I just want to make sure that that is part of this conversation when it comes back. Thanks.
Thank you. Council Vice President Albornoz.
Thank you. I appreciate the conversation, and just a couple of thoughts. First of all, absolutely support holding until we get more information. And I do believe the District 20 team has worked hard and conducted a fair amount of analysis and research here. But I think we benefit from hearing members of other members of the delegation in other districts who may also be impacted by this to get their perspective as well. I mean, if as Councilmember Friedson noted, I'm curious as to what the District 16 team, how they feel generally about this bill. And other members of the delegation as well. So just Ms. Winger, if you could provide any feedback and input from the broader members, that would be really helpful.
Certainly. Just so you know, I mean, the process will be for this piece of legislation after it's received a public hearing, which I think is on the December 15. It would then, the delegation would assign it to its Economic Development Committee, and it will be work sessioned, and so there will be a lot of opportunity for additional input, a lot more vetting of some of the issues that have been raised here, and certainly welcome all the participation from you all too.
Thank you. Councilmember Novato.
Yes, thank you very much, Dad. Just to say that typically, that's what there's a process. I mean, if we agree that we're going to hold because of further information, then we should just direct whatever questions we might have to staff so that it can be a productive process, and make sure that, of course, we have prepared, testimony, et cetera. I just wanted to point that out because it seems, odd that we're holding, but then we're having a full-blown session on it. I think it's important to be able to provide the information that we are seeking to our staff, and then be sure to have testimony ready, et cetera, after consulting with the other delegations as well. But recognizing the District 20 did go out of their way to put together, I think, a really good proposal. So just again, touching up on process here as well. Thank you.
Agreed. So is the staff all clear on what to come back with?
Yes, thank you, Council President.
Thank you. So I think we can move on. Thanks, Ms. McCartney-Green.
Okay, moving on to MC 15, Special Taxing District, real property tax rates. This was recommended or request by the county executive. And essentially, this bill proposes to create additional subclasses of properties for the purpose of property tax rates within a special taxing district, specifically for transportation improvements. So this bill is enabling legislation to allow the county to set different rates. This is a carve out specifically for Montgomery County, and it is county already has one special taxing district for transportation improvements, and that's the White Flint. Council staff recommends holding the bill as there are additional details that the council would benefit from before considering this position. In that chart, there are about 4 questions, and some of them include what is the executive's broader strategy to accelerate transportation projects in the county using special taxing districts? How does this bill align with that strategy? 2, how will setting different property tax rates make it easier to fund transportation projects by subdividing it into districts, into different subclasses? Looking at 3, what comments do developers and other stakeholders in White Flint have for this bill? And 4, what are the lessons learned from the administration of the White Flint Special Taxing District? I will note that the OIR staff memo in the packet includes specifically some of those identified subclasses property. And so they include commercial or industrial, residential rental that has at least 4 unit buildings as an apartments, residential commercial or industrial condominiums, property used for both residential and commercial purposes, and residential townhome or row house and abandoned property.
Okay, Councilmember Raymond.
Well, I mean, this is like a really big item here. I feel like we ought to maybe take this one through a different kind of engagement process. I'd like to hear the executive branch, explain its interest here, but they're asking for a blank check taxing authority. And this administration has been pretty reckless on fiscal issues. And I have a lot of reservations about granting taxing authority to a executive branch that has repeatedly proposed tax hikes without real cause, and has really not been a good partner on fiscal issues. There's of course a lot of angst about some of the specifics. Why are single family properties exempt from the proposed tax hike while rental properties are not? There's a lot of that kind of angst about it, but I think there's fundamental questions about to what extent is it actually needed and why? What's the actual point here? And then, B, how would it work? And there's just so many endless details. So I do not support moving forward with this at this time. And I think we have a long way to go before considering it. I think there's a lot of confidence building that needs to take place in order to justify something like this. So I don't know. This is really coming out of nowhere. It's a very broad-based taxing authority with no particular stated purpose and no particular stated need. I think it's very concerning. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, council staff have recommended holding the bill. So with the caution that we heard on the previous bill, let me call on Councilmember Novato and then Jawando and Friedson.
Sorry, I forgot to lower my hand.
Oh, okay, Councilmember.
I do believe that I think at least the GO and Fed committee needs to have a conversation about this. This is pretty significant change. So I will say that.
Okay, Councilmember Jawando.
Appreciate it. I think getting more information is always, more information is always a good thing. The county executive did hold a press conference, I believe, on this issue. There have been, documents, and this is something that was compared to how things are done across the river in Northern Virginia, something that I know many colleagues like to compare us to as a way to fund projects. I would also say it's not unrelated to the idea that different properties based on size and type and usage should have different property tax rates. A progressive idea. I had proposed several years ago a progressive support of a progressive property tax bill that the delegate Julie Polakovich-Carr had introduced to allow for different property tax rates on classes and sizes of property. I do think that is still something we should be pursuing and have authority to do. There was a statement made by Councilmember Reamer that I want to clear up with staff. My understanding is that this authority would still, to set the rate, would still sit with the council. Is that correct?
That's correct, Councilmember Drummond.
It was made, I think it was said that it would give to the county executive. We set the tax rate. So I'm fine to have a hold and get more information, but I do think there's a merit-worthy conversation. I agree with Councilmember Navarro that doing it, having a session in Fed and Geo would be good, but because it is a big issue, but I think it's an important one. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, thanks. It's definitely a big item and a big issue. Just a couple clarifying aspects of this. The county executive has been talking about this for quite some time. In fairness to him, has had a number of public statements about it. There aren't a lot of details exactly on how this would work. This bill was put in fairly abruptly right before the filing deadline, from my understanding. A press conference, I believe, was considered but not ultimately had, although there was conversations and ultimately a Washington Business Journal article that discussed this particular bill. The bill was framed as a placeholder so that these issues can happen. There is a working group that was convened. Doug Furstenberg, I believe, chairs it and has really organized it. It's staffed largely by Chris Conklin as the lead staffer in the executive branch and a number of other executive branch members. I was asked to join it by Doug Furstenberg. I believe Councilmember Glass also was asked to serve on. He's got his hand up by Doug Furstenberg, and he can weigh in as well. That group did not initiate this legislation, though, which I think is a very important aspect of it. That group was discussing the idea and the possibility of this, potentially making a recommendation. At no point, was the bill considered. There was going to be a conversation after this bill was introduced to discuss it. That meeting was moved and hasn't occurred yet. So I do think there are a lot of questions here that need to be fleshed out. There are some, dynamics. The idea of a special taxing district, this could have implications on the existing one in White Flint, which has been noted. We've received correspondence of concerns about that. We have big questions that we haven't resolved with the executive branch on how to address some of the challenges facing that White Flint special taxing district. And I will also note that there were painstaking efforts prior to my tenure here on the council that our colleagues who are serving in their second and third terms can speak to, of what to include and not to include. And the question of not including residential. This bill does include residential. So residential tenants, apartment buildings, townhomes, anything that isn't a single family home in this bill, is classified differently, which would be a substantial departure from some of those decisions that were made. So there are lots of questions here, lots of things that we need to work through and work out. I do think that a joint Go Fed work session, I would imagine multiple will probably be required since this is such a big issue. And I don't think that we're ready to take this up and decide on where the council's position is on it. So I think a hold that the staff recommended is appropriate. And if it hasn't been moved yet, I would move or second, depending on how you interpret the comments, the staff recommendation to hold this.
Yeah, I don't think we need to vote to hold, but Councilmember Glass.
I would be the second if a second was needed to put a hold on it. And I appreciate Councilmember Friedson adding some of the recent context about the work group that he and I were a part of, that we were invited to. There, lots of conversations during those work group discussions, but there was agreement that the current structure needs to be improved. And from that point on, it deviates as to what one would consider an improvement. And so here we are. But, adding to the context for this conversation, I will remind, especially my colleagues and staff that have been here for more than the 3 years that I have, that it was back in 2015 when former County Executive Ike Leggett had introduced via a similar measure through the legislative process at the state to finance the cost of transportation through special taxing districts, through a new independent agency. And that he ended up withdrawing because of lots of questions. I suspect many similar questions to the ones that we all have, but nonetheless, here we are 6 years later, and I think there is still universal agreement that we need to figure out a better way to fund the important transportation projects that we need to build here in Montgomery County. So I too would welcome a joint GO and Fed committee session to work through this, and hopefully we can move forward in a way that everyone would find agreeable. So I yield back.
Thank you. I think that's everybody. So I think we can, Councilmember Rice, sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Just very, very quickly, just coming off of a national conference with the National Association of Counties and talking about the Biden infrastructure plan and what was recently passed, it is very interesting that in the heels or on the heels of that momentous piece of infrastructure investment that this conversation continues. So I'd really like to understand more about what it is that we're trying to leverage current transportation infrastructure projects for via lining up with that money versus what it is that we're looking to do here. And I understand this is something that looks at a long time effect of projecting what it is that we do, but the two do go in concert. They are hand in hand. And just want to advise people that, again, this was actually back in 2010 when I first joined the council, and it was one of the first items that I voted on, which was County Executive Leggett had vetoed a special taxing district for Clarksburg. And so keep in mind, this goes way, way back, and it's been a continued conversation, a source of consternation amongst the county executive, the council, and residents. So there's certainly a lot to unpack here. So it's certainly something that I would hope that is, while it is certainly in the purview of GO and Fed, I know that many colleagues, including myself, who aren't on either of those committees, would certainly want to be involved in those conversations. So I will either be attending that or would hope that we could have a full council discussion, because this is something that is really about overarching future policy when it comes to not only transportation, but also taxing policy for the county as a whole.
Okay, I think that's it for this one, Ms. McCartney-Green.
Okay, let's see. MC 122, Montgomery County Business Regulation Landlord License. Essentially, this will create a new landlord license that would be issued from the clerk of the circuit court for Montgomery County. And so this license will allow a landlord or require a landlord to allot a tenant to install a satellite or cable TV. The license may be revoked or suspended if the landlord prevents the cable television company from entering the dwelling or installing it, or if the landlord discriminates in rental or other charges based on the cable TV's subscription. Under the bill, a landlord is defined as a residential rental property owner in the county offering more than 5 dwelling units for rent. This is not enabling legislation, and council staff recommends to hold for further legal review and questions regarding implementation.
Great. I don't see any objection.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to PGMC 10722. That's land use documents certification. This bill would require applicants to sign certifications for several different documents. The council staff recommends opposing the bill. We do note that the county executive supports the bill with amendments. A similar bill was introduced last year and the council opposed it. It's notable that Baltimore City had issues with a similar rule. Specifically, it became grounds for oppositions to say the entire application should be rejected or unfavorable decision unturned. In addition, it's unclear what the consequences would be if no certification has been made. For example, if the document is returned, is there a refund to the applicant, and how deadlines are affected? For these reasons, council staff recommends council oppose the bill.
Move council staff recommendation.
That's fine. Councilmember Rice.
Sorry, I was just going to move that. Yeah, so I'll second.
Great. Councilmember, okay, move to second. Councilmember Joanda.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand from if our folks have a better sense of the amendments that the county executive, like what's the background on that, Melanie, and why what the amendments are.
Kathleen has worked on this bill for a number of years, so she's on the line. Kathleen, do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. Thanks, Mel. And Councilmember Joando, as this bill does go back 3 years, and 3 years ago, the county executive worked with, or our staff worked on behalf of the county executive with MC-DOT, with DGS, with county attorney's office, and with council for Park and Planning Commission to come up with amendments that would expand actually the scope of the bill to other documents. And it would have expanded it to recorded easements and rights of way for property, forest conservation plan, any other regulatory development application, essentially. And it would have clarified the type of certification that needed to be made. And the county executive requested those amendments 3 years ago. He supported the bill with those amendments since then. And that's his position this year.
Yeah. Okay. I remember it now. Thank you. I appreciate
Sure.
it. I just want to make sure I was on the same page. Thank you.
Sure, you bet.
Thanks, Kathleen. And
you're welcome.
Who, I don't mean the sponsor, but who's pushing for this bill in terms of advocacy groups?
I don't know personally of any advocacy groups, and it has not done well in the House delegation where hasn't made it out in 2 years.
Okay, well, if you don't know, so we have a motion and a second to hold it. We don't need to move. We don't need to vote anyway, so we'll just hold it.
The motion was to oppose.
Oh, to oppose.
Council President, this is to oppose.
I'm sorry, getting mixed up. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of opposing the bill? That's Council Vice President Albornoz, Councilmember Novato, Friedson, Katz, Rice, Reamer, and all those against the motion. Councilmember Joanda. Okay.
And if we had another option, I'll abstain. I don't know enough about it.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
And just to be clear, that's why I voted, because I same thing, like not opposing. I'm not for it necessarily. I just don't know enough about it to oppose it.
Right. Okay. Next.
MC 1822 is automatic traffic enforcement implementing agency, and essentially this is an enabling bill that would give the county authority to shift automated traffic enforcement responsibility from the police department to the county department of transportation. Council staff has a number of questions about the legislation, including whether shifting enforcement from one agency to another would improve equity, considering that the bill does not allow for increased automatic traffic enforcement. Staff is also uncertain that DOT would have the necessary resources to perform a law enforcement function in conjunction with the courts. The police department is accustomed to evidentiary issues in law enforcement, whereas DOT currently is not. Council staff recommends holding the bill to hear input from stakeholders and to see if amendments are made to perhaps increase the county's ability to use automated traffic enforcement. And that, I'm not sure if OIR or Mel have additional comments on this bill.
Just very quickly, I believe that the bill was supported, it was supported by the executive, and I believe the council supported this piece of legislation last year as well.
Yes, that's what I was going to, I'm sorry to jump in, just yes, Mel is correct. And I was going to just add that point as well, as an important note that the council did support this legislation last year. And as Ms. McCartney Green noted, staff does have some concerns related to implementation. It is an enabling bill. So obviously, some of those issues could be worked out if and when the council decided to adopt legislation to implement it. If the council wishes to continue its position from last year of support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, I'm glad that it was noted that the council supported this previously. I hope that we'll support it again. I'll move that we support it. This is a major Vision Zero issue in addition to a racial equity, social justice issue. We discussed both of those aspects last year. This is a direction that other jurisdictions, including some in the region, have moved, like DC, and I believe the county should move in this direction. We noted last year that there were some implementation questions that needed to be worked through. I think we should be working through them. I had hoped that we would have spent the last year thinking through these issues. It seems like we still have some work to do on that front, but I think that we should continue our efforts specifically related to our Vision Zero goals and our racial equity, social justice goals. This is the direction that jurisdictions are moving in, and we're not on the bleeding edge. We wouldn't even really be on the cutting edge, quite frankly. We'd be following largely the direction where many jurisdictions are going. Thanks.
Right. Councilmember Reamer.
I'll second the approval motion. And I want to thank Delegate Crutchfield, who's taken the lead this year. I've been working closely with the bill sponsors for several years now. This was the bill that last year, famously, a police captain went to Annapolis and testified against the bill, even though the official position of the executive and the council was to support it. Created a lot of confusion. We got it through the House all the same, but it stopped short in the Senate. There's no doubt it would require a new operational procedure. And I want to note for any advocate who's watching that you can basically do this through an MOU agreement between the departments now. So I think it would be helpful if the county executive would actually put that into motion and get building this alternative model that just integrates this kind of camera enforcement more into the transportation department's work as it's planning out road safety. And I think ultimately helps to shift the culture of automated enforcement into a more routine road safety tool. That's kind of the fundamental goal, is to just make the tool more generally understood as part of a suite of tools that can be broadly used, and has been mentioned, with the important qualification that they're not disproportionately placed in any community. They have the ability, which we very much need to do, to help the county back out of a lot of routine traffic enforcement that really is over policing and becomes really not a safety issue and isn't making the roads safer or reducing problematic crashes or things like that. It's just causing disparate impacts and outcomes that are very, very biased from a racial perspective. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but we think that a lot of us believe that automated enforcement can help as a substitute for excessive human enforcement, which is often being misrepresented by critics, saying, oh, we don't want police doing anything related to traffic safety. That's not true at all. We still need police to tackle negligent driving and dangerous driving. I mean, safety is still the job of every police officer and would continue to be the job of every police officer. It's just more the routine, very minor infractions that we would like to see a lot less in-person enforcement for. So we can get more safety and less bias, and this bill can help us do it, and look forward to hopefully succeeding in the Senate and the House this year. Thanks.
Yep, agreed. I've been urging support for this for years, but I agree, Councilmember Reamer. There's a fair amount of confusion about this. This doesn't mean anybody from DOT is actually pulling over drivers. This is just who's allowed to be in the back of the office signing off on a ticket, and particularly at a time when we've had a hard time finding enough police officers. I would prefer not to have one in the back of the office signing off on a ticket, but allow a DOT staffer to do that, just like contractors do, and keep our police out, keeping us safe. Councilmember Jawanda.
Thank you. I appreciate, agree with my colleagues. I think it's already been first moved and seconded that we support, but I also support this as we did last year. I do think it's important to note that, as Councilmember Reamer alluded to, we've been looking at, as a lot of people across the country have, how to remove, keep our residents safe on our roadways and pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, but also reduce bias and unnecessary police interactions. Now, while this bill, correctly as just stated, would not create a civilian traffic enforcement body, it is a critical component to moving in that direction. To getting things like where there are massive disparities. In my offices, we've been looking into over the last year or so, the disparities for low-level traffic violations like registration tabs and air fresheners and tail lights, and they are staggering. And we'll talk more about that. But this is a critical component to moving in a direction where you keep folks safe, allow for automated enforcement, which is a key tool in the toolbox, and also remove some bias. But there are cities like Brooklyn City, Minneapolis, and Ithaca, New York, and other places that are moving towards civilian Department of Transportation traffic enforcement writ large. And while that's an emerging movement, I do think we need to be moving in that direction. So particularly for the things, not DUI, not reckless driving, not the things that we're talking about, as Councilman Reamer mentioned, but for some of these lower level infractions that where there are massive disparities based on race and ethnicity. So I support this, and hopefully we can get it over the finish line this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Albornoz.
Thanks. Yeah, I support, just as we did last year as well. I'll just note for my colleagues, the Office of Legislative Oversight conducted an analysis on this, generally speaking, and briefed the Public Safety Committee on this issue. And implementation is going to be very important here, and not an easy thing. And just we need to note that and set expectations. I hope this does pass. I hope that we do have the opportunity to deliberate and discuss how to responsibly transition this year. But I thought their analysis, as always, was excellent and provided some key information that I think will be helpful to us. But I want to underscore something that Councilmember Reamer said, that we don't have to wait and shouldn't to enact and push forward, just making sure that more of this technology is available right now. Just 3 weeks ago, a 72-year-old woman on her way home to her house right in my neighborhood was killed on Connecticut Avenue. Is a family friend. We attended her wake just about a week ago. The incidents that have occurred on Connecticut Avenue and so many other parts of our county are just out of control. And so we do need to move much more aggressively than we have in working with our state partners to make sure we take advantage of this technology right now and not wait for bills like this in order to make these transitions. So I yield back to you, Mr. President, but I support this motion.
Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of supporting this bill, please raise your hand. Great, that is unanimous.
Great, moving on to MC 2222, Speed Monitoring Systems, Maryland Route 200 ICC. As drafted, the bill would enact local law to place speed cameras on the ICC. The legislation specifies that if the county opts to take advantage of this authority, at least one camera must be placed and used between each exit ramp on the ICC. Installation of these cameras must occur by October 1st of 2022. The bill sponsors intended for the bill to require Montgomery County to place and operate cameras on the ICC, but as prescribed in the bill, may be interpreted differently. And so council staff has recommended that we hold the bill to look at clarifying language, but also to understand how existing cameras could be utilized for the automated enforcement and to see if additional highways might be added to this bill.
Great. Any objection to holding it? Seeing none, we can move on.
Okay, PG MC 10622, that's the Wssc hiring promotion preferences for veterans and their spouses. This is essentially revising the current hiring and promotion preference for veterans by removing the Maryland residency requirement at the time one joins the armed forces. It's also in line with the county human resources practices of hiring veterans by not requiring a Maryland residency requirement. So council staff recommends council supports this bill.
Okay.
Move to support.
Councilmember Rice, Councilmember Katz, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Great. Next.
PGMC 10522, that's WSSC Minority Business Enterprise Utilization Program. This would extend the termination date for the MBE program from July 1st, 2022 to July 1st, 2023. Normally, the program is extended in a 5-year increments based on the results of the disparity study. However, the current disparity study has been delayed due to pandemic reasons. As a result, WSSC Water supports a 1-year extension. Council staff recommends support.
I think we're all those in favor.
Move to support.
Great.
Second.
Without objection.
Yeah, without objection.
PGMC 10922, also WSSC bill regarding plumbing, fuel gas services, license and penalties. This bill would prohibit a person from providing certain plumbing service without a license from the commission. This would include providing certain fuel gas services in the area of Montgomery County or Prince George's County under the regulatory jurisdiction of the commission. Without a license, they would receive penalties or reprimand, suspension, or revocation. Right now, council staff recommends holding the bill for more information.
Okay, without objection. And last. I think it's fine to hold the bill, Ludine.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Sure.
Moving on, PGMC 11122, also WSSC, Washington Suburban Transit Commission, Montgomery County Commissioners repeal of term limit. This bill would repeal the prohibition against a commissioner of Washington Suburban Transit Commission serving more than a certain number of consecutive terms as it applies to a commissioner appointed by the county executive. Council staff recommends holding the bill for more information.
Okay, I think without objection. We're at the end. We have a couple other meetings competing, Ludine, so I think we're going to wrap up, but we got through a lot today. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
See you tomorrow.
Was not expecting this. I would also like to thank Small Things Matter Community Bridges for always helping me find